And we're going to talk to you today specifically about a project we worked on, I would say last year, couple of years, which is with Rathbones, who were founded back in 1742. So they've got quite a rich history. Originally kind of from a maritime background, but they were set up and they've evolved over the years, and they're now one of the UK's leading wealth management businesses. So that's for private clients, charities, trustees, kind of investing their money with them. And we were really tasked with Rathbones to carry out a brand evolution. So visually and verbally kind of elevating the brand to reflect its heritage, so what's been before, but also, more importantly, really to look towards the future and what do they stand for at Rathbones. So you can see on the screen here, the left is where they were when we first met them, and then the right is kind of the result of the evolution. And this presentation is really just to take you through how we got from A to B, if you like, on that journey.
Yeah.
And as I said, discovery is an absolute, key process of this. So with Rathbones, we carried out 62 sessions with various people of the business at kind of all levels. And those were discovery sessions where we asked key questions about Rathbones, why they joined Rathbones, what they felt Rathbones should represent as a business. So I think we had about 120 people overall. So a proportion of the business to try and get a snapshot of how they felt the brand and Rathbones should be brought forward. So we took all the results of that, all those sessions, recorded all the sessions, and then spent several workshops with their team to develop. Okay, we've got all this information from you guys about Rathbones and what it means and what you do and what you want to represent. But how would we then build that into a brand for the future that's going to last?
Yeah, I think on that as well, one of the most important things on the upfront discovery stage is to identify those key themes. What are those similarities that people are kind of identifying? What is it about the brand that needs to be taken forward? Why are they up for this evolution? And kind of how is their future vision going to affect what we ultimately build for them and create? And yeah, as Ollie said, there's kind of various things that came out of that, which we'll go through as we kind of define each kind of stage later on. So yeah, kind of without jumping too far ahead, rather than kind of show the upfront kind of concepts that we developed from that kind of strategy piece and the kind of discovery stage, we're going to talk more through how we defined these elements of this brand, but then within each of these kind of questions, coming back to those discovery pieces. So in particular, the typeface, there's a reason why we chose an uppercase kind of bespoke typeface, for example. The symbol was crafted based upon their history and their kind of maritime history, and something that was in their original building, which is based in Liverpool, which is still there. The color as well was something that they were very, very keen to develop and almost own, which we'll come to. And the image and their story kind of comes back to some of what we discovered about their balance of heritage versus modernity and contemporary vision. So because they, as I said, 1742, they have such a massive heritage and history. So not forgetting that, but how can we move them forward to be a future-facing brand as well? So we've got a tiny bit of a snippet film here, just a bit about the kind of findings of where we first kind of, what do you call it, the kind of insight sessions and kind of the feedbacks from those kind of stages. And then this kind of runs through a bit of our development as we started to, develop the brand.
So a few spoilers here, but just to give you a kind of taste of the process, which we'll elaborate on in the next stage.
Yeah, even down to kind of some of these parts here were kind of the latter parts of actually developing these brands and for print, getting the foils, the embossed plates for the identity and how that moves as well. We're in a digital world. So yeah, their kind of future-facing web was a big part of this and how their motion kind of works. So yeah, what we're going to do now is almost digest those kind of four 4 or 5 questions into kind of our kind of ideas and theories and kind of concepts based on the kind of discovery sessions and what that means with typography, for example, in this kind of first section. So what's in a typeface? As we kind of showed previously, this is where they were, where Rathbones were before we kind of got involved. And we kind of almost dissect that and go, right, okay, the kind of styles of typography, so kind of real kind of basics, sans serifs, and almost the kind of semi serif typography that's developing, which is kind of a bit of a futuristic thing, which is lovely. But what feels right for Rathbones, and the serif, well, quite interestingly, before their previous identity, they were led with a serif. I think in this kind of professional service world, kind of comes with a bit of history and a lot of heritage. So, can we either develop a modern serif, or do we, go with a sans, but we'd be quite confident that still contain that heritage within that kind of sans. So it's not, looking like a startup brand. We've got a authoritative voice that can, tell our past.
Yeah, I think Rathbones was very much about this kind of calm confidence and projecting that. So it's a balance. You're not shouty and young. You're not a history lesson. You're somewhere in the middle there, and the type needed to kind of reflect that.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of began work on this, we tried kind of drawing characters, the different kind of types. Looked at the letter R. Could that mean something? Could that kind of be a starting point somewhere that we lead the brand? Also, the B as well was kind of a key focal point. It's almost a center point to the mark as well. So whether we could ever use that as a kind of visual clue. But then, yeah, kind of the more we looked at kind of lowercase, title case, uppercase. Uppercase was the direction that we chose, and what was agreed, to have that authority, have that kind of voice in the marketplace, to have that confidence as well. But obviously with an uppercase, it can be very, almost aggressive in instances. So the boldness is very important. But if you're too light, are you going to be able to stand with this mark and be confident with it? So kind of finding that happy place with that type. And as we developed the kind of character set for this mark, we went quite expressive. So the top version here, has a lot of these curves. Try and be a bit more kind of almost a friendlier approach to that kind of uppercase grotesque marks. But that was almost too far. It was trying too hard, being too much. So then we kind of started to refine it back. And as you see from the type at the bottom, we're kind of being less with those curves, just to kind of trying to be really clear with what we're trying to communicate. And ultimately, that's kind of how we started to draw these characters. So individually, starting with Rathbones and the kind of marks here, the O, for example, was quite geometric and round. We kind of extended a few characters, we brought them in, and we kind of redrew all of these to work best based on the kind of references of kind of old English grotesques that kind of date back to their history as well, which is also really interesting. And then we, began creating an A to Z, which was brilliant fun. And we've been doing so, we still had a bit of character coming through. So rather than just the less forms that are in the word mark, the letter Q here, for example, had a bit of flair. But then as we kind of later develop, is that flair too much? If we're kind of using this brand, and if that's to sit with our mark as well in other communications, kind of refining that back. But just being really clear and confident in the styles that we're producing. And then developing the typeface, we worked with a type foundry, but ultimately we drew the characters to how we wanted them. So a lot of refinement, a lot of stages. There's probably about 3 to 4 kind of rounds of kind of tweaking these character forms to kind of how we needed. For example, the character R, we went through various kind of rounds of opening the width of the mark of that character to give that confidence ultimately to begin with. But also the T, if the T is matching that kind of almost is too far now. So kind of bringing that in and really kind of refining these characters. The letter E as well. So where we first based this typeface off an old grotesque, some of the characters, if you really look closely, the kind of mid bars of the E and the F are at a slight angle. So we kind of, straighten those up to kind of keep it really clear.
And I think what we found from the discovery sessions was that these are people at Rathbones that really care about everything they do. The attention to detail they take with their clients is kind of first class. And so when it came to the design of the brand, we knew it needed to get that same level of kind of detail, attention, and consideration, because this is not this is not a rush to kind of they wouldn't rush anything. They take their time. They get the answer. Get to the answer quickly. And so we did the same kind of at every level of the brand.
Yeah. And even here with the ampersand, actually, this is really interesting. So when we kind of first started developing these less forms, we kind of looked back and we almost thought that the where we were previously on the left kind of looked a little bit drunk. So we just straightened up the character just to kind of give it that kind of formalization there, just to kind of sit with the rest of the type clumber. And then, yes, ultimately that led to a bespoke typeface, Rathbone Sans. And again, that kind of came back to themselves, this brand evolution, to be able to own and have this kind of bespoke brand identity kit. And that bespokeness leads to their kind of approach within business as well. So their bespoke approach to their kind of families and their generations that they look after and kind of institutions. It's ultimately to... a bit of a short film here, a few details as well, kind of how we're drawing these characters. 3 weights, light, regular, and bold. Yeah, and the actual logo type uses the regular weight. So that was the kind of key weight that we first developed through this. And then through kind of more refinements, for kind of body copy weights and kind of other kind of body styles and heading styles, we created the alternative 2 weights to kind of complement the brand in a wider range of applications to move forward. How the kind of logo works as well, and different sizes. One thing we also did was to kind of also keep a bit of calmness to this mark, was to open up the tracking. So without being too tight, we opened it up just to kind of let the characters breathe. And this is something that we used throughout their kind of headline style as well.
Yeah, I think it was stress testing the mark so that it can work on your mobile, on the website, header, to a business card, to a letterhead. It's got to work in all those instances. So it was very much putting it into practice as well, digitally and physically, into stress testing. So that was how we developed the kind of mark, and then the symbol. So I think obviously when we started working with Rathbones, they had a symbol, and we wanted to say, okay, well, if you're going to have a symbol, that's brilliant. Let's work on that. But what does it mean? It's got to be grounded in the findings, and that's what led out the discovery process.
Yeah. So the original symbol here. So if you can see the image in the background, this is in the Port of Liverpool building. So this is what Rathbones are still based there. Their kind of Liverpool branch is still based up there. They've got offices all over the country now, and some elsewhere in the world. But this compass symbol is a massive mosaic in the middle of this building. And when we went up there to kind of see their kind of spaces where they kind of originated from, it was such a key focal point. So when you walk into the building, it's almost the center point to the building, and then there's always different directions that kind of spin off from here. This is almost the meeting point, the kind of central gauge to this building. And because it was the Port of Liverpool building, a lot of the kind of maritime history throughout the years, is kind of based there. So as Ollie mentioned earlier on, kind of Rathbones kind of started with this kind of maritime history of kind of that kind of stuff. So the compass became a symbol almost, for navigation, to kind of take their clients to kind of these different directions, but also have that meaning and story of where they kind of first came from.
Yeah,
So
it almost became a moral compass, if you like. So, making those right decisions with the client, guiding them through their investments, that kind of stability. That's where the kind of compass idea started off in a maritime basis, but how do we reflect it to a more modern, future facing in that finance world?
So yeah, originally we took the symbol, but yeah, as Ollie mentioned, we can't just kind of draw exactly the exact symbol. We did do that, and we'll kind of come to that a bit later on. But for future facing, favicons kind of smaller sizes on digital, on print. There was too much going on in the symbol, so our task was almost to simplify that symbol right down, so that the story is still contained within this device that we can use. But yet we're future facing this to be a lot more simplified. And how can we tell the story in a simple way and still communicate this idea of kind of compass navigation, but also maritime. So yeah, we went through a lot of drawing stages of this compass, of extending and decreasing these point sizes, so the inner and outer shape. The outer shape is kind of based from their kind of original symbol that's based on the floor, and then working with the inner shapes to ultimately, yeah, try and create a way where we can be simple with this, modern with this, and it's a kind of a symbol that we can be proud of to use moving forward. So I think here it's a bit of a snapshot of a few meetings where we're printing some kind of big AOs on the wall, we're getting the clients in to kind of talk through kind of where we're looking at this, and we're almost dissecting that original piece of design from redrawing it to almost taking all those kits apart. So you've got the outer shape, you've got the inner shapes, you've got these kind of surrounding shapes. But where can we take this, and where can we base references of actual compass symbols that are used in modern day language today? So on the kind of Apple iOS, there's a kind of compass app icon. There's other kind of ways of navigating, and kind of even the Safari icon is kind of that got that compass kind of feel to it on the iOS design. So there's lots of ways that we can kind of look at this. And then here is a bit of a motion of where we kind of started to draw all these shapes. You can kind of see similarities of kind of where we've come from to where we kind of ended up. And this is a bit of an overview. So I'm not sure how many's on here, but we drew hundreds of these, and we absolutely really went in. And the client, as Ollie said, their attention to detail and their kind of dedication to kind of get this right was absolutely spot on. And we really thrived kind of with a client who is visually aware and really interested in this kind of process. And we showed, we were kind of showing these as we were going along, ultimately kind of giving our advice on where we believe that we should go. Some of these almost come back to kind of F references as well. So it's impossible to almost own a compass as an image, as a mark. There's a few other brands in the world that kind of use them. One's a clothing brand, for example, kind of on the shoulder, the classic Stone Island. So even though that's a compass, we've got to move away from visually being anywhere near an association. So if we're moving forward with this brand, they can't be associated with other brands. So how we create that unique look and feel. And then as you kind of go along, we almost started from the very origins of this mark, and the top line kind of shows that real reduction of that inner and outer shape. But then from there, it kind of seems a bit too abstract. We need to know what exactly this means. So that's where we started to kind of increase and decrease these line points and adding more, basing a focal center point to this, so where the kind of compass starts to kind of move from and navigate, and maybe a motion that can tell a part of how this thing can move. And then the kind of third line is looking at the outer shape. So do we actually change this outer shape? Does that help us define this as a compass a bit easier, because the outer shape is quite bespoke in how it's been drawn. But ultimately, that outer shape was kind of almost too important, because that was a kind of real fundamental part of where this original idea came from. So we kept the outer shape, and we really tried to focus on the center point, but without creating a dot, without creating a center circle. So we kind of drew these extended points that kind of go up and across, but ultimately they join in the middle to a kind of key point rather than there being a circle, which is almost that kind of titular focal point. And yes, I think there was maybe 2 or 3 symbols that we did a lot of print testing, a lot of kind of accessibility, kind of web testing as well. We tested various different foilings, various different embossings, debossings, ultimately because the vision for the symbol was not to be big and brash, it was to be almost as a watermark, to be as a kind of quality seal, that kind of, what do we call it? It's almost the sign off to this brand. So we kind of lead with the kind of type, the logo type. We kind of communicate who we are as Rathbones, but then the symbol almost acts. So if you're even down to a letterhead or kind of the web page, the symbol is kind of towards the bottom of the page or bottom of the piece of print, and it's that kind of sign of authority, that kind of finishing touch to the end of the project that has that kind of beautiful print process, or it does that clever trick in motion where it just has that real kind of subtle bit of movement. And I think as the brand does progress into the future, it would be amazing if we could take away some of the typography, some of the logo types in instances, and where this brand becomes seen as this symbol. So we've created this symbol which is from their kind of history, from their kind of original building, but then trying to re-establish themselves to be able to use this confidently in the future to be recognized as Rathbones. And yeah, here's a bit of an example in terms of kind of different kind of lockups and usages of how the symbol and the logo type work together. So there is a logo type version without the symbol, and then in the center there's a lockup which is just to the left of the actual word mark itself, and that's used kind of in quite a few instances where kind of it's quite the logo type is in a lot of their applications for web, where, for example, the right-hand instance where we're kind of divorcing these things. So there's a clear relationship, and the size relationship is the kind of cap height of the word mark is the kind of size of the symbol, and that is also so we're not creating that hierarchy that's focusing more on the symbol or more on the logo type. They have that kind of real balance. I think balance throughout this project was a key point to mention throughout.
Yeah, and I think that kind of center logo, if you like, that's what we're using, predominantly for launch to get the brand out there, because we really want to get that symbol associated with Rathbones. And then almost your option on the right is as it rolls out, as it evolves, as you become more known for that, then you can start to have a bit of play with the symbol, divorcing it from the lockup. Because you've obviously got a set rules in place to start with. Everything has a structure, but then as the brand evolves, that's when you can have a bit more play with it, which I think was important.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to color now, and color is really interesting. So in a kind of corporate professional services world, blue is used a lot. A lot of brands have distinctive blue colors, whether they're more cyan or kind of Barclays. The Deutsche Bank's kind of having a bit more vibrancy in the kind of their colors they're using. But ultimately, blue is a color that they've used throughout their history. Also kind of links back to their maritime, the kind of the waters, and kind of that kind of color themes. But we wanted to be able to create a color that again they could own and kind of have as their bespoke color. So we began to work with Pantone to ultimately create their own bespoke Pantone color. And this color was a bit of an evolution actually, which is really interesting. So we've got multiple Pantone bucks in the studio, and we came across a chip that we absolutely loved and the client really was up for using. 281U. But then as you see from, I mean, it's pretty hard to see on the screen here, but the far left chip, which we've highlighted in a red dot, was actually, we were kind of going through this process and we found this color. We checked it against a few other different Pantone books. We checked the colors, and fundamentally, the color was slightly different. And we almost panicked because why is one of these chips that we've all agreed on slightly different to everything else? So that was fun. We contacted Pantone, based it out of the US, and we ultimately had to send them. I think we sent them half of the chip because we were too scared to send the full color because we knew this is the color that the brand wanted to use. So we sent half the chip and we asked them, why is this slightly different to our other Pantone books? And then it came about that the story was in every so many thousand books that are printed, the occasional color does slightly differ, which is really, really interesting. And this is a one in a crazy ratio instance that happens, but it happened to us in a very important moment. So they said to us, we can make this color, it doesn't exist, so it would be your color. And we were like, great. So we managed to get a really good deal. We worked with them because they almost kind of messed up our process. So we went through a few rounds with Pantone to create this exact color. So they had half of the chip in the US laboratory. We had half of the chip in London, where we were kind of meeting the clients, going through as a team, kind of which color was the best match. And ultimately, we landed on the color. And this now is called Rathbones Blue. It's an uncoated Pantone chip. And this is unique and completely bespoke to Rathbones, which is brilliant. And again, that comes back to the kind of bespokeness of everything that we've done for this project. And that's kind of why we're, talking through these kind of these defined stages as kind of brand elements of typeface, color, symbol, is that every aspect and output of this brand has really been bespokely created. And as they move forward with their clients, they can really tell the story of owning this color, of owning their symbol and their story, which is beautiful. And obviously, print is amazing. Don't get us wrong. We've done lots of print with Rathbones. That's absolutely brilliant, and we've made the color work, which is absolutely great as well. But also in digital usage, it's impossible to own a color because there's only so many hex codes that you physically can be possible with the digits of RGB. But we got the closest match, which is brilliant. And this color also works really well and complements the bespoke color in print. So for web and kind of social, the color works really well. And yes, ultimately, sound breakdowns. So for CMYK, so not everything can be used with a Pantone. So when Rathbones kind of using quicker decks to be printed out, there is a CMYK breakdown, which is the best match of the kind of color. And also creating various tints throughout the project as well. So in information that starts to come through. It also plays a part in the symbol as well. So the symbol uses a lighter tint of that Rathbones blue. And to complement the bespoke color, we also added in we called it character blue, almost a vibrant blue, really to be used for digital usages, especially on web and the kind of CTAs, call to actions, so that when you have that button, when you have that rollover state, that's when that flash of blue comes into play to work alongside the kind of headline copies or the kind of solid colors of this blue, so that character blue is the standout kind of flash moment of this brand. So it's used sparingly, but quite a key and important part to the brand. And then, so that was almost our kind of primary core palette, with white and black included. And then alongside that, because Rathbones, they create a lot of data, they do a lot of reports, a lot of decks, a lot of presentations. The usage of color is also very important. So we created two palettes actually. This is the warm palette. So this is a kind of secondary, tertiary palettes to be used in information and data. Also kind of illustration as well when images are being created. So there's a warm palette where these colors can work together. So when creating information, these colors work really well. And to compensate the warm, we had a cool palette, again, to do the same job, but not to be used together. So if we're doing some information or an illustration, we'd choose one of the palettes and we'd use those colors and those tints in a way that could be, yeah. And then, yeah, coming to what's in an image, this is kind of almost where we start to tell a bit of storytelling now. So we, again, a lot of brands in this world, rely on, stock sites. Getty is an example, which is great. It needs to be done. We ourselves use stock sites quite a lot. But I think the problem with stock sites is that it's very hard to own. It's very hard to be distinctive. A lot of these images, if you're searching for certain criteria, could have already been used. Competitors might use them. I'm sure you'd all agree. I've certainly used an image that I might have seen somewhere else on occasion. So sometimes that kind of bespokeness is lost through kind of stock sites. So where possible, we did shoots. So we did an architecture shoot, which is kind of in the background here. An awesome photographer called Dan. We did a nature shoot, and we did various people shoots with clients and with their kind of employers, their kind of advisors. So we could really show the real people, which we felt was really important. But also, when you commission photography in the kind of art direction, it's to create their library. So when you create their photographic library, they can use this library for years to come, and it doesn't get outdated because you get the massive variety. But then also, that cost is almost justified because it's unique to you and it's your own imagery of your meaning and your story. But also the cost is, if you're licensing imagery from Getty and you're paying a lot of money for one image, we have a library here, which is a great investment that we can use for a long time. So yes, all these images became part of their storytelling. This image in the background is a beautiful kind of reflection of balance between the kind of a window versus a meeting room in the distance in this window. So this image is actually taken from their kind of roof terrace in their London office, and we're looking through the window. You get the reflection of the city in the background, which is beautiful, but you see a bit of the kind of maritime history, there's a bit of a storyboard in one of their meeting rooms, which kind of navigates through their history at certain times of key milestones. So with all these images, they all tell a story. And again, with stock, that's sometimes quite hard to find that perfect image. And yeah, so also coming back to the idea of balance, which was also kind of a key part to this, where best possible, we would kind of match two images together with Rathbones, and this kind of goes through a lot of their collateral, their output, their kind of web, their kind of social media. So this is all about kind of balancing on occasion the kind of the heritage against the kind of modern expression. So whether that's architecture, whether that's nature, but also to have that balance with stories as well. So whether it's clients, whether it's the advisors themselves from Rathbones. So yeah, human and nature, kind of architectures versus the nature kind of scenes. And yeah, the kind of clients being out in the kind of in the real world as well. So the kind of architecture points, the architecture is really interesting because their Liverpool building is to the right of this 50-50 split. It's a very, very kind of heritage Port of Liverpool building, stood there for the test of time, versus their London office on Finchley Circus, so they're kind of a lot more modern building, but yet still Rathbones, still having that same approach to how they work, but yet these two offices tell a great story of their kind of modern and their heritage, and we kind of use this throughout, even with kind of other art direction. So kind of black and white almost gives it a bit of a heritagey feel versus the colour and vibrancy, but ultimately having those two images is lovely to be able to tell a story of balance as well, and how we use contrast in the imagery, so you can see more of an expression of kind of something going on versus a bit more of a kind of an outer perspective. And then, yeah, I think that kind of leads us to a bit of the expression of the brand and how that comes together. So, yeah, a lot of the art direction also kind of inspired by water, and kind of the idea of the maritime history behind this and kind of where the symbol came from. And this is also quite calming as well, and it kind of links back to their kind of blue color. But yeah, again, a lovely story. And yes, ultimately that came into a rather big guideline. I think in total there was about 10, 12 guidelines that we developed for Rathbones. So again, quite a big professional brand business. They needed yeah, a lot of guidance, and their kind of internal teams are very, very good at executing the brand to how we've designed, which is always lovely to see. You know, sometimes when you create a brand, you know, it's to your vision, it's to kind of, you know, where everyone's aligned. But sometimes, you know, without those kind of key guideline parts, it might be hard to implement the brand. So for us as a studio, every project has a guidance, whether even if it's kind of web, you know, we'll still have those kind of key fundamental interactions that's important to communicate. But for Rathbones, yeah, we had a core elements guideline, we had social media guidelines, we had tone of voice, we had their kind of key strategy pieces, we had iconography, we had wayfinding signage, digital web, print, a lot of guidelines and a lot of guidance that anyone who takes on this brand, whether that be an external agency or their kind of internal teams, there's a way of aligning the brand to the vision, which is brilliant. And this is the kind of the web that we developed. This was a very kind of big project. So a lot to communicate with the website, a lot to communicate with their story, and also, you know, with their art direction, which is brilliant, and the kind of the flash of their blue color, which is great, and it kind of has that bit of a call to action almost. And then, yeah, kind of navigating through what is quite a complex business and a lot of different sections to the brand, but how can we really simplify this? So the previous website was quite complicated to get to where you want it to be. So again, a part of the, you know, the upfront web work was to redefine the navigation, you know, how we're communicating these key areas to the brand, you know, being really simple and explicit. So what we do, our clients, about us. So really, you know, sounds quite simple to be honest with you, but having that kind of powerful way of communicating something that is quite complicated, but using a navigation system that can be simply expressed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's again about that kind of calm confidence, you know, that I think filters through the whole design that was developed. So, you know, pared back, clean, clear information design, because ultimately that's what the client's looking for. You know, in our day-to-day life, we don't have time. You know, we need to get straight to the point. People want to find things quickly, especially on a website, and that's what this whole kind of web project was based on.
Yeah, and I think even, you know, when we use the primary usage of the Rathbone sans in the uppercase, it's not in a kind of aggressive manner. It's in a confident manner. The tracking's open. The sizes are not huge on the page. And then with the kind of lighter weights of the typeface, they complement each other really nicely. Yeah. And then, yeah, kind of, you know, also touch on web, you know, how those secondary palettes come into play with data visualization, which is awesome. The kind of color, so the kind of bottom left tablet example of kind of, you know, also with those 50/50 examples, we're using kind of block color with image to be able to use text and language. And also, yeah, ambition for illustration and art direction.